Educon. Education in Construction.
Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's absolutely foundational, whether you're in shop class, starting a new job, or honestly, just tackling DIY projects in your garage. We're talking about safety. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of how accidents happen, and more importantly, how we can systematically stop them in their tracks. Now, before we get too far in, let me ask you about a common trap. Do you know the exact difference between a hazard and a risk? People throw these two words around interchangeably all the time, right? But in the safety world, the sources show us they actually mean two completely different things. And honestly, knowing the difference could quite literally save your life. Okay, so let's put on our safety inspector hats for a second and look at this interactive case study. We've got a well-meaning, but let's face it, totally clumsy painter here. Just take a look at his environment, his setup, his posture. What alarm bells are going off in your head right now? What is about to go wrong? Just keep those thoughts in your back pocket as we formally define what we're actually looking for. To figure out what's wrong with our painter's setup, we first need to define our terms. So, a hazard is exactly this: anything with the potential to cause harm. Notice I said potential. A hazard doesn't mean you're actively getting hurt right at this very second. It simply means that an object or a situation or an environment has the inherent capacity to injure you, make you sick, or cause damage. It's the source of the danger. All right, jumping back to our clumsy painter, scanning his room for things that have the potential to cause harm. What do you think the hazard is in his specific setup? Is it just one isolated thing, or maybe a combination of bad choices? Looking at the safety materials, here are the options. 1. Working right next to the base of the ladder. 2. That totally unsecured paint tin resting way up on the top step. 3. The complete lack of personal protective equipment, or PPE. Or 4, all of the above. Well, it turns out it's number 4, all 3. Each of these elements is a distinct hazard, because every single one of them has the potential to cause harm. Okay, now that we've nailed down what a hazard is, let's tackle the second part of the puzzle. What is a risk? While the hazard is the potential for harm, a risk is more of a calculation. It's the likelihood that the harm will actually happen, combined with how severe the outcome will be when it does. Think of risk like a formula. It looks at the hazard and asks, okay, what are the actual odds of this going wrong, and how bad is it going to be if it does? The really crucial takeaway here is this direct comparison. Hazard equals the potential to cause harm. Risk equals likelihood plus severity. So, a loose floorboard, that's a hazard. The risk is the high likelihood of someone tripping over it, combined with the moderate severity of, say, a sprained ankle. See? They are permanently linked, for sure, but they are absolutely not the same thing. Let's see how this plays out in our painter scenario. Phew, that was a close call, right? His ladder got bumped, the paint can tipped, and paint spilled. The hazards were realized, but he got lucky and dodged physical harm. He avoided getting injured or completely covered in paint. But here's the thing. Just because he got lucky this time doesn't mean the risk wasn't there all along. Now let's look at the alternative scenario. His luck runs out, and the accident actually happens. The paint can falls directly off the top of the ladder, completely soaking him. We can see exactly what went wrong, right? Because the hazards we identified earlier, working way too closely to an unsecured load, well, they directly resulted in this mess. But notice the final escalation of this incident. Not only is he covered in paint, but ouch, look at that giant glowing red bump on his head. That heavy can didn't just spill, it struck him. This right here is the direct consequence of ignoring the hazards in his workspace. The potential for harm has literally become actual harm. So, this brings us to a critical question as safety inspectors. We have an injury, but to calculate our risk, we need to evaluate it. How serious do you think this specific injury is? Based on what we can see, a nasty bump on the head and some spilled paint, would you classify this outcome as mild, moderate, or severe? Take a quick guess before we look at the official criteria. Let's measure your guess against the official severity scale. Step 1 is mild, which covers things like cuts, abrasions, and minor injuries, basically stuff you just need a standard first aid kit for. Step 2 is moderate, covering broken bones or a severe disease or illness that requires significant medical attention. And Step 3 is severe, which means the outcome is life-threatening or even death. Based on this scale, our painter's bump on the head fits squarely into Step 1, mild. Section 2, likelihood. So, with severity out of the way, we have to figure out the likelihood of the accident happening. And just like with severity, there is a simple 3-point scale. Step 1 is unlikely, basically a freak accident. Step 2 is possible, meaning there's a fair chance it could happen given the circumstances. And Step 3 is very likely, as in, it's almost guaranteed to happen if the environment doesn't change. Let's connect this scale directly back to our specific painter scenario. We got a guy crawling around on his hands and knees, bumping into a step ladder with an open, heavy, totally unsecured paint can resting on the very top step. Under these conditions, it doesn't take a genius to see that this accident isn't just possible, it is very likely. So we assign a likelihood score of 3. Next up, the risk matrix. All right, this matrix is the ultimate tool used by safety professionals to turn abstract hazards into concrete, actionable data. It's just a simple grid. You've got severity on one axis, rated 1 to 3, and likelihood on the other axis, rated 1 to 3. To find your total risk score, you simply multiply where the two columns meet. So a mild injury that is unlikely is 1 times 1 for a score of 1. But a severe injury that is very likely is 3 times 3, giving you a massive risk score of 9. Let's bring it all back to our clumsy painter one more time. Armed with your new knowledge of hazards, severity, likelihood, and the risk matrix, try calculating the final score for this exact scene. You have all the data you need to act as the safety inspector right now. Go ahead and do the math in your head. If you calculated a score of 3, you completely nailed it. Remember, the injury was a bump on the head, which is a mild severity of 1. However, because of that terrible setup, the likelihood of that can falling was very likely, which is a 3. Multiply a severity of 1 by a likelihood of 3, and you get a baseline risk score of 3. This exact number tells a safety manager exactly how urgently they need to fix the situation before work continues. And honestly, that is the entire process from start to finish. This is exactly why understanding the difference between a hazard and a risk matters so much on a job site. You spot the hazard, the thing with the potential to cause harm. Then you calculate the risk using your matrix to see how dangerous it really is. And finally, you use that information to change the environment and prevent the accident before it ever even happens. I want to leave you with this final thought. Knowledge is basically useless unless you apply it. So take a second and look around your workshop, your garage, or even your kitchen right now. What is a hazard you can spot today, and how can you eliminate it before the math catches up with you and it becomes a real risk? Put your safety inspector hat on in your own life and stay safe out there. Thanks for learning with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.